With bows, blush, vintage perfume, and heartbreak quotes, the Coquette aesthetic has taken over TikTok and Tumblr feeds, reviving hyperfemininity with a soft, seductive twist. But beneath the lace and the Lana Del Rey lyrics, is there something deeper, maybe darker, at play? Let's explore the psychology, history, and contradictions of the Coquette aesthetic and why it's more than just a trend. Now, before we start, I do want to make it clear that there are some trigger warnings that will be present in this video, and the trigger warnings are as follows: as eating disorders, pedophilia, danger of the male gaze, and overall just dark themes surrounding relationships. When one thinks of the word coquette, they probably think of the trends that started in 2010 but then came about in the 2021 on TikTok, but actually comes from a French word as a woman who trifles with men's affections. Well, the coquette actually goes all the way back to the Rococo period with frilly bows and lace and all fun pops of color, where Marie Antoinette specifically was a pioneer for this specific aesthetic. It started to appear in the 1700s and then started to carry on, especially in the culture and in the artworks. One of my favorite artworks is actually the swing made by, and I am gonna say this wrong, but Jean Honor Fragonard. If there's anyone French or someone who speaks French watching this, you have my deepest apologies. I do not know how to say that name, but he made this very good artwork that I think sums up the Rococo period as a predecessor to Coquette aesthetic really, really well. You have the women on the swing, of course, with the frilly little dresses and the lace and all the bright pink and very flowery, and then you have her husband from behind her who is pushing her, but also he's in the shadows. He's very far away from her and distant. And to the front of the lady, there is her lover. He is the one who has snuck through the gate and is passionately looking at her in love and adoration. And if you notice, the woman is swinging in between both of them as if she's teasing both of them. Even her leg is lifted up in front of her lover to just give him the slight little teasing peek of what might be underneath. It's a very scandalous painting. When it came out, it was supposed to be for just a private collector, a private family. Was not meant to be out in public, because when people saw this, when it went public, it sparked some controversy, but it's a great little introduction to what Coquette leads into. Another big predecessor to the Coquette aesthetic is the book Lolita, written by Russian-American novelist Vladimir, so sorry if I pronounce this wrong, Nabokov. The protagonist and narrator is a French literature professor who moves to New England and writes under the pseudonym Humbert Humbert. He details his obsession and victimization of a 12-year-old girl, Dolores Hayes, whom he describes as a nymphid. Humbert kidnaps and abuses Dolores after becoming her stepdaughter. Privately, he calls her Lolita, the Spanish diminutive for Dolores. Obviously, this is a very dark and not the most age-appropriate book, but it does teach us a lot of the themes that are hidden inside the Coquette culture that we will discover later in this recording. Now that we have the history and general understandings of the beginnings of Coquette under wraps and realized, let's get into more of the fashion aspect and the key elements of this aesthetic. Coquette fashion is sweet, seductive, soft, yet sharply styled. This is Coquette fashion, where innocence meets flirtation and vintage femininity is the main character. Some of the key elements from most of the Coquette wardrobes we see are delicate lace and sheer fabrics, ribbons, bows and satin details, baby pinks, ivory whites, and romantic florals, corsets, puff sleeves, and anything romantic. In today's version, the Coquette girl wears lace-trimmed camisoles, vintage slip dresses, kitten heels. She quotes Lolita out of context, listens to Mazzy Star, and posts hazy photos with captions like, "I want to be loved so deeply it ruins me." This aesthetic isn't just about fashion, it's constructing an identity. It tells a story. I'm fragile, I'm feminine, I'm mysterious, I'm dangerous if you get too close. It drives on ambiguity, childlike and sexual, sad and beautiful, empowered and dependent. It invites attention, but never long commitment. This isn't accidental. This is aesthetic psychology in motion. Now let's begin to go into the psychological aspect of the Coquette aesthetic. From a psychological standpoint, the coquette aesthetic taps into several powerful concepts, starting with the halo effect. We subconsciously, as a society, associate beauty with goodness, intelligence, and value. The coquette aesthetic plays on this. Beauty becomes a kind of social currency. If you aren't beautiful or don't match up to coquette beauty standards, then your worth is defined by that and lessened by that. This also translates to the people we normally see in the coquette aesthetic, which is usually very thin white women. Barely ever do we see women of color or of different body shapes in the coquette aesthetic, and this plays into what a woman should look like. However, there are some instances in the coquette aesthetic where we do get to see women of color, but usually it is a rare occurrence. And concept we're going to go into is the intermittent reinforcement. Psychologists know we become more attached to unpredictable awards. It entices us and draws us in. The coquette persona, flirtatious but distant, mirrors this pattern. The more uncertain the outcome, the more invested we become, the more drawn into it we become, which leads into number 3, the male gaze. This is the idea that women's value is often seen through how they are perceived by men. The coquette figure is deeply shaped by this. Her power is in her appeal, but it's power that depends on someone else watching, usually men, and their opinions of her. This can often lead into very bad interpretations of what a relationship should look like and how some people can objectify women. Finally, we're going to talk about identity formation in adolescence. Many who adopt this aesthetic are teens exploring who they are. Psychology says identity experimentation is, well, healthy because teens are exploring who they are inside. But when those identities are built on fragile ideals like the sad, beautiful girl who never asked for too much, they can blur the lines between performance and personality and innocence. Now we're going to get into the darker psychology aspect of this video, and once again I'm going to list the trigger warnings for this part. Trigger warnings are eating disorders, pedophilia, danger of the male gaze, loneliness, depression, and also some mentions of mental illnesses. This is unfortunately where the coquette aesthetic gets dangerous. It often overlaps with what some call sad girl culture, glamorizing loneliness, instability, or even mental illnesses. In soft lighting and soft voices, the suffering becomes beautiful. This is called aesthetic distance. We're more comfortable engaging with trauma if it's wrapped in silk, but this can blur reality. Crying in the mirror becomes an Instagram moment. Disordered eating is captioned with romantic poetry. Loneliness is turned into a mood board. Suddenly, mental illness becomes part of the look, not something to heal from, but to aestheticize. This is one of the reasons why so many people invalidate when a person says they're struggling from a mental illness, because in a lot of instances people do it to just get attention or to beautify it, and that's when coquette can get on the bit of a dangerous side, but also encouraging harm to others. It invites some sort of loneliness and some sort of beauty and enchantment within the loneliness, within the harm, and within the strict standards, especially the beauty standards that Coquette upholds every partaker in it to uphold. And yet, despite all of the mental illness, imagery, and beautification, there's a reason why so many young women are drawn to this look. In a world that celebrates dominance and control, embracing softness can feel radical. To wear lace, to be vulnerable, to say, "I feel deeply," takes strength. Many see coquette aesthetic as reclaiming femininity, not shrinking for it. But the question is, are we choosing softness freely, or are we taught that it's the only way to be seen? There's a clip on YouTube that I saw that I feel like really sums up the coquette controversy really well, and I'm gonna play that right now.
That is one of TikTok's favorite new aesthetics, but it looks like it might have a problem we've definitely seen before. If you're craving femininity in excess, the cutesy look features soft pinks, frills, and hair bows. Merriam-Webster defines a coquette as a woman who aims without sincere affection to gain the attention and admiration of men. And it seems that something a little concerning is lurking underneath the trend's light and romantic exterior. A lot of the videos feature thin white women and often try to emulate singer Lana Del Rey, who's controversial in her own right. And just like its close cousin, the Lolita trend, both can be problematic depending on how you use them. The term Lolita comes from a 1955 novel that portrays a young girl who's preyed on by a much older man.
Grown-ass men get turned on by little girls.
And many worry that the modern trends sexualize youth. While it's totally fine to love all things pink, frilly, and feminine, it's even better to make sure you're loving them for you, not just for men's attention.
I personally couldn't have said it any better than what she did. Coquette is a fun aesthetic as long as you're dressing for yourself and feel good in it, and not for the gaze of other people. The Coquette aesthetic is layered, beautiful, romantic, but often heartbreaking. It gives voice to longing, beauty, and identity, but it also asks us to reflect. Is this empowerment, or is it a performance for something more?